In stacking his cabinet, Donald Trump is proving that birds of a feather flock together. The man found liable for sexual abuse, facing accusations of sexual assault or sexual misconduct from at least 18 women, has chosen multiple nominees facing allegations of misconduct themselves. There's Donald Trump's nominee for defense secretary, Fox News host Pete Hegseth. He says he was fully cleared of sexual assault allegations, a claim repeated by his supporters. Here's Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin over the weekend.
He wasn't charged. He wasn't even kind of charged in this. There was no crime committed. The police dropped everything. It's what's unfortunate in today's world. You can be accused of anything, and then especially if it's something like this, you're automatically assumed to be guilty. If you read the police report from cover to cover, which I have, and I know every reporter has too, it is clear there was nothing there. There was clear that there was no crime committed, and so that doesn't prevent Pete from moving forward in this.
As friend of this show, Barbara McQuaid notes, quote, the absence of charges is not the same as being cleared, a term that suggests a finding of actual innocence. And the Washington Post sums it up like this, quote, the allegation was investigated by local authorities who didn't press charges. The accuser later threatened legal action. Hegseth paid her, and she signed a non-disclosure agreement, according to his attorney. Hegseth's nomination comes, though, after years of scrutiny for the Department of Defense for failing to take the problem of sexual assault in the military seriously enough. And then there's Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. He, of course, has been tapped to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Wall Street Journal on him reports this, quote, senators from both parties said they expect Kennedy will face questions about alleged incidents from years ago that recently have drawn attention. Kennedy has been accused of sexual assault in the late 90s by a woman who is willing to testify before the Senate. Kennedy has said he is, quote, not a church boy. That is one way to put it. According to the Wall Street Journal, Kennedy's accuser, Eliza Cooney, says this, that she was 23 years old when she began working as an intern at the law clinic Kennedy helped lead and as a babysitter on the weekends for his family while living with them. She recalled that one day while other members of the family were not home, Kennedy came up behind her in a pantry. He put his hands on her hips and slid them up to the side of her breasts. Cooney froze. A worker at the house came in and interrupted the scene, giving Cooney the chance to exit, end quote. That was just one of many sexual advances Kennedy made, according to Cooney. Kennedy says he has no memory of that incident and apologized to Cooney over the summer by text, a message that Cooney says was disingenuous. Even one of the few women who has been nominated to Trump's cabinet, she's named Linda McMahon. She's been tapped to lead the Department of Education, is herself embroiled in scandal. On her, the Washington Post reports this, that McMahon faces a lawsuit from 5 plaintiffs who helped set up WWE events as teenagers. They allege that Linda McMahon and her husband Vince McMahon, the WWE co-founder, knew that the then teens were being sexually abused by high-ranking WWE employees. An attorney for McMahon says that the lawsuit is baseless. All of this is to say nothing of the man Trump had tapped to be the country's chief law enforcement officer. We are, of course, talking about Matt Gaetz, now of Cameo fame. Even though he denied all wrongdoing, Gaetz withdrew his nomination for Attorney General more than an hour before news broke that a woman had 2 sexual encounters with Matt Gaetz when she was 17. And intrepid reporting in the New York Times revealed that the Justice Department had uncovered a web of payments to people who participated in what the Times describes as, quote, drug-fueled sex parties, end quote, including women who say he hired them for sex. Matt Gaetz took himself out of the running, but his nomination by Trump is clearly part of a pattern. As Elise Hogue writes in The Bulwark today, it's part of a backlash to the Me Too movement that was a defining moment in the first Trump term. Quote, in that light, the charges against Hegseth and his ilk are a feature, not a bug, to this president looking to put the women who disrupted his first term in their place. With these nominations, Trump's message is abundantly clear. Women are meant to be scared, and men are meant to pick a side. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former chairman of the RNC, now co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend, Michael Steele is here. Plus, former Democratic Senator and MSNBC political analyst Claire McCaskill is back. And with me at the table, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard's here. Vaughn, serious question. Are they trying to populate the cabinet with men accused of sexual misconduct?
When you're looking at the individuals who are being tapped for these roles here, you're seeing individuals that fit that profile. And I think that it is the ultimate American question in 2024 is just how much are Americans willing to ignore to justify the means to which people believe that these individuals are conveyor belts for the policies and the types of governance that they want. And if people view RFK and the stories and the allegations that have been levied against him, and they acknowledge that that was Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s past and that that is who the man is, but if at the same time they also believe that he's going to go in there and fundamentally change the FDA and the CDC, which one is more important to you? And I think Americans, by and large, by selecting Donald Trump and by extension, people like RFK Jr. or a Pete Hegseth or a Matt Gaetz, I think that they made that decision clear this month.
Well, I guess let me just play devil's advocate here. And I guess we can debate who is the devil's advocate here. But if you win, and I think in Trump's view, winning the popular vote is probably as meaningful to him, right, as his electoral victory. Why abandon the first-term brand of the best people and hire, by any objective analysis, some of the worst people?
It's a good question. I think when you look at the justification of what Pete Hegseth can bring to the table, you have somebody here who fits a profile for Donald Trump, who plays that role of somebody who is good on TV, who can effectuate that idea of what masculinity and what strength in a military general should look like. I mean, he tried to make that pitch for the likes of James Mattis, back 8 years ago. I remember right after he was elected. This go around, though, I think that you see him turning to people like Mehmet Oz, people that have a pedigree on their TV history here, and as a means that I think overcomes perhaps what may be their resume deficits, right? And that's, I think, also why just in the last few minutes we have the memorandum of understanding that was just signed by the Trump administration with the GSA, in which they explicitly say that they are going to bypass the government and the FBI background checks, because I think to a great extent, I think that it's clearly less of a priority than the other bona fides and the other presentation and with the other qualities that Donald Trump's believed these individuals bring to his administration.
I mean, I was vetted when I worked in the White House, and the reason you're investigated isn't to cast anyone out. It's to make sure that you're not a target for blackmail by a foreign government. I mean, is there a process that will replace the background investigation?
Potentially when they take over the FBI, right? Chris Wray is supposed to, his 10-year term ends in 2027, Trump's pick. His term is supposed to end in 2027, but our reporting suggests that either Chris Wray is expecting to be fired or will step aside under the assumption that he's going to be fired. And at that point, you put in somebody like a Kash Patel or somebody that could be confirmed. And at that point, does the FBI under Donald Trump then do those background checks that they are choosing not to go forward with now? I think that that's why, Tulsi Gabbard may run into issues with Republicans on Capitol Hill, confirming her out of questions of what may be in her FBI background checks. And so I think that this is that moment here where I think the Trump administration is going to face, I think, questions up on Capitol Hill in this much of the way that Matt Gaetz did. But are people like Mitch McConnell, are people like Bill Cassidy, Murkowski, Collins, are they going to stand up and essentially act as the FBI almost to a certain extent in telling the American public or making the demands that there is a greater sense of transparency outside of reporting and understandings that come out of police reports like in Monterey, California, that only came after Donald Trump nominated Pete Hegseth to take over the Pentagon?